Hello, and welcome back to But That's Okay. This is episode 10.
Woo!
We're going over some conspiracy theories. With me, as always, is Joe and Zach.
Hey.
I'm Caleb, and we have special guest
Hi.
Elijah.
Good to be
He
here.
is joining us because he's the foremost expert of all of our friends,
Mhm.
at least.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
fair.
we're going to go over all the random, wacky stuff that we see on the internet, and I think we should start with Flat Earth because it's really funny.
It's really funny. It's the most meme-filled. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
also the one that has the most funny videos online of people
Oh, yeah.
trying to confront NASA
If the
employees.
if the Earth was flat, cats would have pushed everything off the edge by now.
Okay.
Like
So we're already starting with the memes.
Yeah, I'm glad
So-
we started with like the most obvious one.
my favorite video for disproving that the Earth is round. They're like, and it just popped up on my YouTube timeline. I was like, okay, might as well watch it. If this is the best proof they have, might as well. Like, we'll see what their 100% guaranteed argument is. And it's this pilot who flied for some agency like Pan Am. I don't know what it was. He flew for him for like 20 years. And he's like, okay, the only reason that I can tell you that the Earth is flat is because if the Earth was round, we would constantly be nosing the plane down every couple of minutes to stay
Yeah.
close to Earth.
Yeah, because that makes sense.
Because in his mind, gravity is down, not towards the center of Earth. So he was like, according to him, they're at escape velocity on a 747. And he's like, if we weren't nosing that puppy down every 20 minutes, we'd be in space. And he's like,
Dude, Delta is missing out on an income stream to take people to space.
he's like, our horizontal horizon, or he's like, our artificial horizon is our most useful tool. He's like, and it's always telling us our altitude. He's like, and it's always the same. He's like, that means the Earth's flat. It's like, no.
Wow.
You,
Okay.
But here's the two rules that I like to follow, being the expert, I guess, of the group. The two rules I like to follow for conspiracy theories. Number one, is there a good motivation for that conspiracy to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Number two, how many people would have to keep that conspiracy secret? Because, as we know, people are normally pretty bad at keeping secrets. So,
right.
as the number of people required to keep the secret goes up, the likelihood that it's actually true goes down.
Right.
That's my two rules. So with Flat Earth, not only would every person at NASA, every astronaut, every airline pilot, every scientist have to be lying, they would have to be doing it for no reason whatsoever, because there is no benefit for everyone to believe
Their
that the Earth is
benefit
actually
is like,
round.
as soon as that entire generation dies, the last one's like, y'all are stupid. We had y'all on the ring
we
the
got
entire
you.
time.
We got you.
Yep.
Good grief. That
Those
makes
are
a
some
lot
good
of
rules.
sense.
Yeah, I like those rules. That's all.
I think a lot of what Flat Earth is about is what it did for us in the 60s and 70s, where we were able to kind of get our country rallied together to go to the moon. And they're like, it was all a government conspiracy just to get us to go to the moon and bring America is great again back to America.
Which that's another good one, right?
Boy, I'm so
The
glad you
moon
said the
landing.
moon.
Yeah.
Yep. So I was actually looking up a picture a second ago. There's like a lot of contradicting shadows on the first pictures from our moon landing. It's like more than one light source and a whole bunch of other stuff. People are basing the fact they're saying that the moon landing was false because of these things. Like,
Mhm.
that was their evidence. And I firmly believe that the United States would have 100% lied and told the rest of the world that we did it because it was during the heat of the Cold War, and it was like, if we don't prove we have some missile tech, we're probably going to die.
Yeah.
So that sort of, if that is what is pushing people to believe that, I can understand it, but at the same time, that'd be a really well-kept secret by a whole lot of people
Mhm.
that you think would come out by now. You know, like with NASA or whoever else it may be.
Yeah, that's one of those good examples of one where you can see the clear benefit or motivation for the conspiracy, because it makes us look really good compared to Russia.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to think that the Russians were, keeping all eyes on this supposed space mission, and if it didn't actually happen, the Russians would have been all over that.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't really buy that one whatsoever. just for the simple fact that the Russians didn't call us out on it.
Mhm.
Right.
They could have. They were literally one step behind us every step.
Right, the
Well,
Russians were first in space.
They were ahead of us for a while.
for a second,
Right.
and then we got to the moon, quote
Um,
unquote. Maybe we did. Maybe.
so one of my favorite things about the moon is the speed it spins on its axis is perfectly relating to the speed that it moves around the Earth. So that way we only see one side of it to 1 degree. It has never changed ever. Like it perfectly. We've never seen the other half side of the moon.
I've honestly heard that before. You say that. I still have no idea where to look that up or where
Well-
that's from. That sounds really interesting, though. I've always
you can
wondered
just,
why.
You can just Google it. I Googled it last time that we
Is
talked
it-
about this, but
Is it like the Earth is just imagine, like, I'm gonna be really simplistic. Earth is spinning left. Just
Sure,
generalize left. Is the moon spinning left at the exact same rate that
no.
the Earth is spinning?
So the moon spins. So this is the Earth. This is the moon.
Yeah.
We're really gonna have to do a detailed diagram for this since
Yeah.
it's a podcast.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. for
The
an audio
moon
podcast.
spins at the perfect rate that it goes around the Earth. So we only ever see one half of it. Like we
But
would
the Earth
never
spins
seen.
too.
Yeah, the Earth is spinning at the same time.
But the
Right,
Earth
but that
spins
doesn't like. I don't care if this is spinning 1,000,000 miles per hour. You're never going to see from any spot on Earth the other side of the moon. That's what I'm getting at.
Shouldn't you though?
I mean,
No.
the moon's spinning,
you
so
have the
you
bottom-
would see the other
the
side
The
of
moon
the moon.
spins so slowly as it goes around the Earth
Yeah.
that you only perfectly see. So
Anyway.
like it's spinning, but at the perfect rate that it goes around the Earth.
So wait,
It's-
what does that have to do with the moon landing?
It doesn't have to do anything with the moon landing. It has to do with all these
jumping from
ridiculous
topics.
conspiracy theories about the dark side of the moon. And people are like, "That's where all the aliens are," or like, "The moon is a spaceship
Huh.
created by blah blah blah."
Right.
Like
So either Pink Floyd was lying,
Pink
or
Floyd
the
is
Transformers
lying,
really are there.
or the Transformers are there. One of those two things. But yeah,
Interesting.
please
We're
go.
just
Look.
kinda-
Maybe we'll put a link in there. But like,
That
we
that
never
sounds
see the other
interesting.
side.
I never really thought
So,
about it.
Joe, what conspiracy theory did you come up with to talk about today?
Okay, so I have heard about this one from my sister, and it's not that impactful at all, but it is interesting to think about.
Okay.
The Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
We all believe the Titanic hit an iceberg. You know, somehow there's debate on how it sank, but besides the point. There's a conspiracy theory out there. I actually looked at their website, and it's really well done, and it's like really graphical and really cool looking. But it's all about how they're trying to prove that the Titanic is not the ship that sank. It is another ship that was built at the exact same time, and that labels were swapped for the two ships.
What?
Yeah. The Titanic was technically another ship
Mm-hmm.
that somehow got a different label on it or was
Right.
taken on a different journey from another ship,
Mm-hmm.
and that ship was the one that sank.
for
Why does that benefit anybody?
It
I'm not
doesn't.
exactly sure.
So
The evidence that they have is is like the structure of the two boats themselves. They say that the windows are different on one ship compared to the other, and they look at the ship that survived versus the ship that sank, and versus the actual sunken ship itself that's underwater. They looked at when both of them were sailing, when one of them was underwater. The windows match the other ship that's not the Titanic that's underwater right now.
right.
And
instead of matching the one that is
yes,
underwater.
Yes.
S-
And
If-
also the size, and also I think it's the shape of the front. Of the
Are they
boat,
saying
I should
that
say.
the other
It would be
boat
really
was
hard.
made for the purpose of like just being sunk, like that's it, or
Mhm.
was it supposed to be?
Sort of. That
'Cause-
they are just claiming it is not the same boat.
Because
That would
something
be-
that's come out since is that the boat that's underwater, if we're assuming for the sake of this argument, I'm just going to keep calling it the Titanic, but the Titanic, it came out later that the 3 smoke pipes that were on it, 2 of them were for show because they were on a deadline. And
Right.
it's like, yeah, we'll just add 10,000 pounds of weight, and like, it doesn't help the engine at all, it
Yeah.
doesn't help buoyancy, but like, oh well.
It just
So
looks cool, yeah.
so if the other one was just made to look like the Titanic and go out and sink, then that's a really like valid point that you can make to it. It's like they literally put these on here just so it would look
Yeah.
like it and
I would
so
have
it
to
would sink.
I would have to look up the exact point of why they're trying to prove this. I think there's something devious behind it. Like
Dun, dun, dun.
something about the Titanic sinking was
Queen's
being a
jewels
good
were being-
thing or something.
I mean, it was
I'm
an
not exactly
expensive boat.
They were
It was an
taking-
expensive boat. It was wasn't it like it was like really, it was like a celebrity almost, that boat.
Well, I mean, it was unsinkable. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole point of, like, the reason the Titanic is famous is not because it hit an iceberg and it sank. The reason it's famous is because it was supposed to be unsinkable. It was the premier, cruise line of the time that, only the elite of the elite could go on. They could go anywhere they wanted. It wasn't ever going to sink, and then
Right.
it sank.
Right.
But I think it'd be really hard to prove that because, I mean, there is debate in how, like, where exactly it hit the iceberg and then how it sank in terms of, like, did it actually break in two? Did it
Yeah.
break in a third into 2/3 and things like that?
Yeah.
But all of the research that I've seen on that, and the only reason I know this stuff is because I came from a bunch of scuba divers, so we watch that stuff all the time. Anyway, is that it's... Gosh, it sounds so dumb when I say it this way. The Titanic is really deep. The remains of the Titanic are very far underneath the water. So when it hit the iceberg and it put that gash in it where it started to take on water, and finally where the structural integrity of the boat was compromised, the most popular belief is that it was essentially sinking, I forget the front or the back of the boat, but either one was under the water and the other half was out of the water, like the fantails were out of the water, so I guess it was going down from the front.
Yeah.
The structural integrity was finally weak enough that it cracked in half and it broke apart, and that's why the wreckage is so far away from each other under the water. But as it went down, it was literally being torn apart just from the momentum of going through the water and where all the structural integrity was taken away from it. It'd be really, really hard for someone to, like, look at the remains now and go, that's not the Titanic, because it's had, like, years and years of saltwater corrosion, not to mention that in the moment, all of the damage and destruction that occurred, like,
Maybe.
but following Elijah's 2 rules, I don't know who that benefits.
Well,
like, who is going to
maybe-
benefit from, like, that wasn't really the Titanic.
Maybe the idea was they weren't going to leave anybody to keep the secret, and they were just planning on killing everybody and taking
I
all their
think
money.
that's what it is.
And because I mean, they were like the wealthiest people in the world at that time on that boat. Like, also you had a whole bunch of people that weren't very wealthy, but there was a lot of money on that boat.
I think there's another thing going with, there was another boat that was out at the same time that the Titanic was sank.
There was another
Yeah.
boat in the area because
Yeah.
they were communicating with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so, and that's where the famous
Dun,
SOS
dun,
came from.
dun.
Right? Yeah. So, I think they're saying that boat was the real Titanic and that the other boat was not.
That other boat was
And
much
all they did
smaller
was just
than
take
the
all
Titanic.
those. Well, maybe. Were you there? Do you know? Were you
Sir?
out there at sea?
Sir?
Were you out there at
Sir.
sea? I don't know.
I have been out there at sea, not that cold.
Why sink the Titanic? Elijah, do you have any idea on that?
The only motivation I could see with that one is that it's almost a fake conspiracy that could be put out by, I don't know, the people that built the ship, maybe.
Right.
Because that, like Zach said, the Titanic was supposed to be unsinkable. So it's almost, could be a cover-up job type of
Right.
thing.
They rushed it
Like,
through production. And
well, see, that wasn't the real Titanic. The real one didn't sink. So almost like a cover-up story to make themselves look better. I could see that angle of it, but at the same time, I don't know if it's that much of a benefit to them. And also, it'd probably take several hundreds of people that knew the truth that didn't say the truth.
oh yeah,
So
so
I
I
don't
come
know-
out now.
I don't know if I buy that one, but I do see a small motivation in there
Mm-hmm.
that could motivate that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I mean, like, even I guess if the motivation was like, oh, we're gonna take all these rich people's money, like that was a really poor plan. Like we're gonna sell into like the Arctic, we're gonna hit an iceberg, or we're gonna like have some sort of damage where it's like, everybody get off the boat, and it's like now all that is in like ever how many hundreds of feet of freezing salt water.
Right, but all that could have been all the whatever they wanted off the boat could have been taken off the boat well before they crashed the ship or blew
I mean,
it up, blew a hole.
Also,
in it.
a story about
I
how
don't
the
think
two
it would've
pieces
been
are
taken
far
off.
apart,
Mhm.
being, and also being the reason why. Oh, where's the remains of the ship? Where's a lot of the remains of the ship? Oh, likely cover-up story that the ship perfectly split in half, and that one piece flew this way, one piece flew this way.
Yeah.
So,
explosions.
I think it might be just someone trying to.
But
Anyhow.
interestingly enough, so another cruise line, not a conspiracy theory, just fact, another cruise line has started production on the Titanic 2.
Titanic 2, yep.
And they're supposed to be like, it's supposed to be like designed after the original Titanic, and it's going to be staffed with crew like from the same era and all this stuff. And it's just supposed to be like a retro, like super fancy thing again. And when that post, I saw that post on Facebook, like that story from wherever, and all the comments were like, who was dumb enough to get on this boat? Like, seriously, like, I will ride from England to the U.S. After that, I'm getting off. Like, I'm not going anywhere else on that boat. But I thought that was interesting, too.
Yeah, kind of a bad omen. I'm not sure I would want to ride on the Titanic too.
If you ever get
Yeah.
a boat, name it Unsinkable 2.
Yeah.
Well, Elijah, what'd you bring to talk about?
So I've got a funny one and I've got a serious one, but I kind of wanted to see what you guys came up with first before I revealed mine. Because if all you guys do a serious one, I'll do the funny one.
Okay.
So
Caleb.
I want to hear both. Like,
Well, what then? Do you have anything?
No,
do
do
you
you
want
have?
to say?
Well, he
do
was
you
a
have
flat.
a-
Yeah.
I mean, the flat Earth was pretty funny, but like, do you have a conspiracy theory maybe that you sort of believe is one of the more trustworthy ones, or ones that has a lot more background to it? I guess.
there's my favorite conspiracy theory at this moment is really funny, and it's just everyone makes all the memes about my FBI agent is watching me through my camera and through my phone and all this stuff. Elijah posted a really funny meme about it a couple days ago. It's just a picture of a cat. It says my FBI agent watching me drink my 6th bottle of ranch. It's really funny.
That's pretty funny.
But it's like a joke at this point. But at the same time, like I can't remember what the name of the bill that was passed is, but it's just like the Patriot Act. It's like we kind of called the NSA out and we're like, hey, you're watching us. And they're like, uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? And it's like, okay. But now it's just kind of like turned into a joke of like every person has one person watching them. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's to that level, but for anybody that thinks that we're not being watched or looked at to some extent, I think they're crazy.
So are you saying that you think the FBI and the NSA are behind some of those memes?
Right. like in Men in Black, they
We're
get
gonna throw 'em
questioned. They get questioned about what they're doing, and he's like, "Yeah, it's aliens," and they're like, "Pfft, "Yeah, right." Like walk away. It's like they're just playing mind games. They're like, maybe if we just like start the joke, nobody will look into it.
Maybe. I don't. That at the end. Well, I say
truth will
that,
dismay.
like those. That's just a creepy topic in general. Like I mean, even the software that we're using today to record our podcast, we could technically just be like they could just be listening to us.
Oh, we
Right.
hope.
Dude, that
Like
is
and
going to be
subscribe.
crap, because if they're
Like
taking
and
our
subscribe,
content and
dude.
posting it for themselves, I'm going to be angry. There's nothing I can do about it, because whatever, but I'm going to be so disappointed.
But yeah, no. As far as I'm concerned, those are the only topics that I had brought up, and I'm just interested to see what Elijah brings to the
I
table.
like the FBI. I think it's a good one because there's a clear motive, right?
Right.
So they can surveil people. And there wouldn't need to be that many people in it, just the people that are doing it. So that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, did you bring anything good?
I didn't bring anything good, because I'm not a huge fan of conspiracy theories, truth be told. I mean, the big one that I always think about anytime someone says conspiracy theory is like, who killed John F. Kennedy? Like, because there's always, the people is like, well, he was on the grassy knoll. No, he was in the third story of the library annex or whatever it was. And that one's just sort of like, I mean, that's just like the most popular one, I guess, because I took a class called American Pop Culture when I was in school, my early years of school. And we had like an entire like week and a half just like research and discussion on the John F. Kennedy assassination, and like watching the videos and watching research and like really watching just like all these different angles of like what's going on for us to like form our own opinions on it. And it was just one of those things that I like, for me personally, it just boiled down to like, he's dead. Like, someone killed him, he is dead. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, it doesn't matter if he was shot from the library or the grassy knoll. Homeboy is dead.
Right.
I
mean, the Kennedys were.
but it's interesting because it does raise the question, like, who did it, or like not who did it, why did they do it,
Right.
and why is there such polaring dispute from those two different areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because it makes me think, was it one of those things where it was set up? It's like have multiple shooters, so if one person missed, the other person had them, kind of thing. So it makes me think if it was like a, I guess, an inside job where, like, you know, not the government, but like the secret government that helps control the public government was like, we gotta get rid of Kennedy.
Right.
He served his purpose, and let's get rid of him.
All the Kennedys, apparently.
Well,
That's
all the
started.
Kennedys, yeah. Marilyn Monroe was pretty upset about it.
I like that one because most people today generally agree that it was Lee Harvey Oswald
Mm-hmm.
alone. Nobody else fired any bullets. That's generally the consensus now. But like you said, the real argument now is why he did it.
Right.
Was he in league with someone else that helped him do it?
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, I'm sure you know about the nightclub owner named Jack Ruby that killed Lee Harvey Oswald
Mm-hmm.
before the trial. So why did he do that? Was he just a patriot that was just so angry that he did that? Or did he have something to cover up there? So that's a good one, and I don't really know what I think about that one. I'm more inclined to believe, like I said, he was just a crazy lone wolf character because of the implications. If he wasn't, there would have to be so many people involved in that type of cover-up.
Well, if it was, well, if there were that many people in that cover-up, that many people had been silent for so long up until that point, why can't they just continue being silent from that point on? I guess is my question. All they did was kill a president that's going to be that a new president will be reelected.
Right.
Well, there's a couple different theories. Like, one of them is that Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the vice president at the time, was in on it.
Right.
There's another one that said the CIA/FBI were in on it because the Kennedys had come out and say both John and Robert had come out kind of against the FBI, against the CIA, and some of the things that they were doing. So there's that angle. Were they involved? Were the Russians involved because we're at the height of the Cold War? Were the Cubans involved because we all know the deal between JFK and the Cubans?
Yeah.
So there's so many things out there.
Right. There were a
That
lot of
could
parties that
be.
would have benefited.
There's
But-
clear motive, especially most interestingly with Lyndon B. Johnson because he's the vice president.
Mm-hmm.
So if he had a hand in it, then he could be president. But at the same time, I just don't really buy it because I feel like somebody would slip up somewhere
Yeah.
with any of those, and we would know by now. So I don't really buy the conspiracy with JFK.
People are really bad about keeping secrets in general, especially once if they live to be old enough, they'll come out and just, oh hey, like I did this, like.
Well,
This
what would they
happened.
have to gain from it? They wouldn't really have too much to gain from exposing something like that.
Well, I mean, they wouldn't have anything
And
to
even
gain,
then-
other than just like the clear head of saying it's out there. I don't have to deal with this anymore. Also, I'm like 88 years old. What are you gonna do? Kill
Most
me?
of the time, it's a deathbed confession
Right,
type
exactly.
of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of have a clear conscience going into whatever.
Yeah.
Going into that thing called death.
Yeah.
I get it. I like that. I like that conspiracy too. That one has a lot of variables to it. All right, Elijah. I guess.
All right,
is what we
so I guess I'll do both of them. Which one do you guys want to hear first?
Let's end on a lighter note. So
Okay.
let's do the series.
Let's do the
got.
serious
I think
one
I
first.
know this serious one too. I think you've talked to me about
Maybe.
this one. Yeah.
So both the ones I'm going to talk about, I think, fit both of my criteria that I set up at the beginning. The serious one that I want to talk about has to do with a current conspiracy regarding Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So the theory goes that Kim Jong-un is different from his predecessors. His dad and, going farther back, his grandfather were sort of these communist idealists. They really bought into communism. They really thought their system was going to work. And they really did think the rest of the world was evil and out to get North Korea. But Kim Jong-un, you can look this up, was educated in Switzerland. So the theory goes that while he was in Switzerland, he kind of got a different perspective on the world than either his father or grandfather had. So he's educated in Switzerland, he's exposed to the outside world, and he sees exactly how the rest of the world is. So the theory is that Kim Jong-un is self-aware. He realizes what North Korea really is and how the rest of the world really is. He knows North Korea is not so great. He knows the rest of the world is kind of better. But here's the thing. He can't come right out and say it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know anything about North Korea, it's that North Korea is controlled by fear. The civilians are in fear of the government above them. Everybody in the government is in fear of whoever is in charge of them on up to
Right.
the generals, and the generals are afraid of Kim Jong-un. And so the theory goes that if he did just come out and say, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that all heck would break loose.
Right.
And he doesn't want that because he's afraid the people and the military in general would take it out on him because of his father and grandfather's sins.
Right.
So the end game for the theory is that he's just trying to slowly normalize and slowly open up the borders. And this theory actually got a little bit of a boost here lately with the Olympics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because North Korea attended the Olympics in South Korea. He sent his sister to the Olympics. So it's just kind of a slow movement type of thing, or that's the theory anyways.
Right.
That he's aware that North Korea is not what his father and grandfather thought it would be.
So he's just dealing with a very unstable situation. He's just
Exactly.
trying to slowly guide it down, and instead of just saying we're wrong, guys, and somebody accusing him of being, a traitor or whatever it may be,
Right,
him
'cause
being overthrown. And
Most
blah,
of
blah.
North Korea does buy into this idea of North Korea is the greatest.
Right.
So if their leader comes out and says, no, we're not, the repercussions for that could be
Oh yeah.
enormous. Not
Right.
to mention, he could probably be killed in the aftermath.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that's why? Do you remember the story about a North Korean soldier running away from
That was
North
pretty
Korea
recent,
and getting
too.
across the border, and he drove a jeep past the security and everything.
Yep.
He got to the border between South Korea and North Korea.
He was shot like
made-
4 times.
He was shot 4 times. He fell down across South Korea's border. South Korea took him in, and he had like a bunch of diseases. He was like awful. He was barely living as is before the gunshot wounds, but he's doing great now.
He was wasn't he at the
But-
state of? No, I don't think.
One of the more interesting things, I think this might tie into it. What if that I just literally made this up in my head as I'm hearing you, Elijah, but what if that was something Kim Jong-un wanted? Because when he was being chased, you can see him jump out of his Jeep and start to run to the border because his Jeep couldn't get over. I don't even know if it's a Jeep, sorry. It was like just a
a military Humvee
whatever,
thing.
Yeah. He starts running for the border. Well, number one, he had a bunch of diseases and a bunch of things wrong with him physically. He's not a very fast guy. Number two, there were 6 soldiers right behind him, all with guns, that were about 10 feet to 20 feet away from him. And they all missed until he crossed the border.
Well, that's just. I mean, I don't care if you're talking about whoever you want. North Korea, if we're assuming, is one of the more wicked places on earth right now. Humans being humans, if you're trained as a soldier for however long, and then you are immediately told to shoot somebody else that has been trained as a soldier like you, and
This
you
is
just
North
said-
Korea.
right? but I'm
North
still
Korea
saying,
North Korea, just to counter that immediately, North Korea is the place where even you can see testimony from like people that have had families over there. They didn't even know the difference between mom, dad, and sister and daughter. Like they were just people. And a son of a father would give up his father, like tell them where his father is hiding to get food. He didn't care about his dad getting tortured.
Right.
If that happened, he gets food. He doesn't care.
I'm still saying, look, you can't assume that someone has no humanity left. Like, in almost every war we've ever been in, 60% of soldiers shoot high on purpose for their first 20 combat zones. Like, they just do not have the intent to kill anyone. They just want to show up, shoot the ammo so that way it looks like they did a good job, go home, get a medal, go home for real. Like, the end of story. Like, I think in the case of someone is trying to defect from North Korea, and probably they all, I mean, I'm not going to say all of them, but some of them probably were wanting to do the same thing. Obviously, they knew that they'd be hunted down and killed like they're being forced to do at this time to this guy, but I don't know. Back to what you were saying about if he was put up to it, maybe, like Kim Jong-un. I don't know. The whole disease thing makes me think that he maybe wasn't an outright soldier at that point in time.
What if that was what I'm trying to get at is what if that was just a way to show how bad North Korea is, and then Kim Jong Un after that incident started communicating with South Korea again.
Right.
It could be. The only thing I would say is that there have been defectors for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't the first. But I see what you're saying in that if he had been captured, or he very easily could have been captured or shot. So I see where you're coming from there.
And he was shot.
He was shot 4 times, but they were, if you look at video footage, they were right behind him the whole time. He had maybe from me to that wall, which is about 15 feet away from soldiers at some point.
And you wonder if those soldiers, like, were
Missing on
punished.
purpose. Or
Missing on purpose, or then afterwards if they were punished, or
for not,
how that
not
went.
accomplishing the job, I guess.
Or how that went exactly.
Mm-hmm. And there was no clever planning behind him escaping. He literally just drove past everybody and
Right.
just made it to the
And that makes it seem very, just sort of in the moment. I mean, I would think that if you were being held against your will, or you knew that you wanted to leave, I would think that you would try to plan it out. I mean, that's kind of how history has gone for as long as we've known. Like, people in concentration camps literally put on a play for the soldiers so other soldiers could escape a POW camp. Like, they will do really crazy things, but it's planned at least. I hate
this
the
guy
idea
was
of,
dying.
right.
He was very much going to die.
And that's just sense of urgency, I guess. You're just kind of like, I have to leave. But
anyway, I like that theory a lot, Elijah. That does kind of put some weird things into perspective to think about. Because you're right. How can someone be that non-self-aware, especially getting an education from a country that's not the one that he was born and raised in, or the one that his grandfather and father ruled for forever?
Yeah, so I'm glad we did that one first, so we don't have to end on the note of, diseased and starving soldiers.
Yeah, that was a little more solid.
I mean, it's harsh, but I actually really like that one. I haven't thought about that one.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
All right, so here's the second one, and I guess this will probably be one of the last things we do here. Okay, so let me set the stage a little bit.
Okay.
We're in the Star Wars universe.
Perfect.
oh yes, I know exactly where this
So
is
excited
going.
now.
Okay, so disclaimer, I did not invent this theory. I'm just going to kind of re-articulate it a little
If you're
bit.
thinking about what I think you're thinking of, I hate this theory.
We're in
so
the Star
much.
Wars universe.
Mm-hmm.
There's a character in this universe who is extremely athletic,
Mm-hmm.
capable of performing acrobatics, somersaults, such.
accidentally.
In battle, he is extremely successful, taking out multiple enemy combatants, being unarmed.
Mm-hmm.
He's able to take out multiple tanks,
Yep.
being unarmed,
Yep.
using only his physical self.
Yeah.
Okay?
Or possibly the Force.
In every major event
Mm-hmm.
in the movie, he's present, and he has an impact in that event. So if I just said all those things to you at the beginning, you would assume that this character is Force sensitive, or a Jedi or Sith or something like that, correct?
Right.
So to frame it that way, we would assume that this character has access to the Force, light side or dark side.
Mm-hmm.
But when I say that this character is Jar Jar Binks,
I hate this theory so much.
and that's exactly the reaction that we
Right.
expect, right? That's exactly the reaction we
Yep.
expect. We see all these things happen in front of our face, but we don't think anything of it because of the way that Jar Jar
Right.
portrays himself as a bumbling idiot. And that's why we hate the character of Jar Jar.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of takes away from Star Wars a little bit, because there's no character like him in the rest of Star Wars. He's an idiot, but he's extremely successful.
Yeah.
Right? So the theory goes that originally Jar Jar was planned to be a Sith or a Jedi or a Force user in general. But after the backlash from the first movie, George Lucas kind of backed off of that a little bit, because after the first
Because nobody
movie,
liked him.
because the backlash against Jar Jar was so hateful that he didn't have,
If they would have continued the trilogy and the series in that way, oh my lord, it would have been detrimental. They would have been really unsuccessful.
But if you think, like, Jar Jar was such an important piece of the first movie. He's present throughout the whole first movie in every major event, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But in the second and third, he has 5 to 10 minutes of screen time, maybe. But in those 5 to 10 minutes, we see him give emergency powers to Chancellor Palpatine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that, being very important to that storyline.
Yeah.
Right.
He also goes to meet Obi-Wan and Anakin as they're getting off of an elevator. Even though that he is not supposed to know they're there, he's just acts surprised, but is also the first to greet them, and it's sort of alluding that he's force sensitive and knows that they're there, but doesn't want them to see what he's been planning or see what he's been doing. You can make a really good case for it, and I think a couple of us have watched videos showing all the facts and everything pointing to it. The biggest thing, in my opinion, is I can't remember the name of the hometown for the Gungans. I don't know what it's called, but Jar Jar is banished from there.
Mm-hmm.
And to make the argument that he's banished from there because he's so clumsy that he destroyed the place or almost destroyed the place is really dumb. Because they're all kind of honestly scared of him. Like, as soon as he shows up, it's like a deep hatred. They're like, you have to leave. Get out of here. It's not like, oh, the town idiot's back. Hooray. Keep an eye on him. Like, they want him to leave. And I think it's because the Gungans, which the Force mind tricks don't work on the Gungans, but I think they know that, or at least they were going to allude that he was Force sensitive and that the Gungans knew he was and that they wanted nothing to do with him. They wanted to, stay peaceful on Naboo, and that was it.
I'm sorry. There are 2 quotes from George Lucas that I saw that are relevant here.
1 second out of context, because I think I know what you're talking about.
It could be somewhat out of context, but it's in the documentary for the making of The Phantom Menace. Quote from George Lucas is, Jar Jar is the key to all of this. Now, in context, it seems a little different, but taken out of context a little bit, and I know it's a dangerous thing to do, but even just watching the first movie, what is Jar Jar key to in the first movie? Besides the finding of Anakin Skywalker. So we have that. And another one is that George Lucas wanted the prequels to mirror the original trilogy. A lot of the things he does with Anakin mirrors what happened with Luke in the original trilogy. So think about episode 5 when we're introduced to Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
We have a weird, bumbling alien that seems like he can only get into trouble and can't do anything right and seems really stupid from the audience perspective. But then we have the big reveal that this alien is actually a super powerful Force user. So the theory also goes that he was trying to mirror that aspect of the original trilogy, and in the second movie would have revealed Jar Jar, this bumbling idiot alien, to actually be a Force user.
Right.
That is really interesting.
And he is Palpatine's right hand for most of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Gives emergency power to Palpatine, and he is pretty influential in that. But the out of context is whenever he says Jar Jar is the key. I think you were the one that told me this, but he's talking about the animation. Or I think it was someone we work with was saying that they were talking about the animation of Jar Jar Binks at that point in time. He's like, whatever it was, they were trying to figure out a certain way to make him look better, and he said Jar Jar is the key. Like, and I think it might have just been for the Gungans in whole, but you take anything and then you have George Lucas say Jar Jar is the key, and it's like, holy crap!
Yeah,
out of the mouth of babes, like here it is. Like,
and if you want to take the theory even further, it's that Jar Jar and Palpatine were in league the entire time.
Yep.
That Jar Jar was a Sith Lord in league with Palpatine. And if you think about it from that perspective, if you're talking about a galaxy-wide series, spans entire galaxies, Palpatine and Jar Jar are from the same planet. That's like, on a galactic scale, that's like being next-door neighbors to someone.
Yep.
More or less. So they're from the same planet. Jar Jar gives emergency powers to Palpatine, and he's just influential. He's always there. And if he was such an idiot, why would he still be there? Why would he still be allowed to be with the Jedi and be with Chancellor Palpatine if he really was just an idiot alien?
As far as the conspiracy theory goes, I I do believe, like, I've seen all these videos, I do believe that at some point in time, Jar Jar Binks was going to be a Force user. They were going to come out and say it, but George Lucas had a really hard time making Star Wars in general. Like, he did most of the shooting because his crew said they would not work overtime. Like, he lost half of his set due to a flood. Like, he had a really rough time making that movie, and it was just what he wanted to do. I think now, if they were to try to reveal any of that, or if they were to try to go back and say that that was the plan, I think there would be a huge drop-off, including me. I'd be really mad about it. But I'm still kind of mad about it every time somebody brings it up, but
Yeah.
I can see that it is a really valid argument with all the amount of sheer dumb luck that Jar Jar Binks has, especially when the droids are attacking the Gungans, and he's just like, oh, let me accidentally take out an entire fleet and make it look stupid easy. Ugh.
So following down the rabbit hole a little bit, though, so if Palpatine and Jar Jar in league together, operating under the assumption that Jar Jar is a Sith, Force sensitive, Force wielder, whatever the case is. So how do you think that works? Because at that point in time, the Sith operate under the rule of two.
No,
Right.
the theory is that Jar Jar trained Palpatine.
Right, no, I know. But, I mean, it's like a big thing for the Sith that you never, like...
Right.
So whoever the master is has the apprentice. And the apprentice always has a secret apprentice that they're trying to, like, build up to try and overthrow their master. So, because they're always, like, power hungry, they're always following that. But... do you think that follows? Because Count Dooku is very open.
That's another thing. That is another thing for this theory. They say that Count Dooku was wrote in because everything that Count Dooku does was going to be Jar Jar Binks. Like, they say that Count Dooku was wrote in solely to fill the role of the apprentice, and that Jar Jar Binks was supposed to be portrayed as the apprentice, but then it was going to be revealed that he was actually the puppet master the entire time. And instead we get this really flashy 3-minute lightsaber fight with Yoda and
So about the rule of two, I agree that it is somewhat against this theory, but at the same time there's kind of a backdrop or a precedent for the rule of two not being followed with General Grievous, because Count Dooku trained General Grievous while he was still an apprentice to Darth Sidious. So that's kind of a counterexample there. But we also have, from things that have been released later, the Darth Plagueis story.
Right.
And through multiple releases after the fact, we know that Darth Plagueis was actually alive and working with Palpatine right around the time of the events of the Phantom Menace and a little bit before that. So we have Darth Maul being an apprentice as well. And keep in mind also that the only canonical evidence we have for the rule of two comes from the Jedi, who were shown to be extremely arrogant, and that's kind of why they had their downfall. They were like, there's only two. There can only ever be two, and they thought that because of their wisdom. So maybe they were just being a little bit arrogant there, and actually they had broken the rule of two with Jar Jar.
Right.
Yeah, that could have...
Well, and they were really bad about breaking the rule, because Palpatine's already trying to turn Anakin while Darth Maul's still alive, and you know, if you're also adding
but also like Palpatine didn't know, like the whole thing with the rule of two is it's always a secret apprentice. So using Count Dooku as an example, so Palpatine's the master, Dooku's the apprentice. Palpatine knew General Grievous existed, but I'm sure he thought General Grievous was a general, not an apprentice to Dooku. Just like Asajj Ventress was his apprentice.
Right.
You know, I don't know if Palpatine knew about Asajj Ventress, but she was a secret apprentice. And just like with Darth Maul, Palpatine thought he was dead. So, you know, and Palpatine didn't know that Maul was alive, and this is going into the Clone Wars animated series. He didn't know that Maul was alive until Darth Maul had gone to Mandalore, until he went to Mandalore and took over Mandalore. And then Palpatine immediately goes to Mandalore and just, like, silences it. So, it's really interesting. Like, I really love that theory because I think it adds a completely different spin on it. But it's interesting. You know what happens to Jar Jar in the end?
No.
For his character. So in the it's not the Fallout series. What?
The Fallout series.
No, not the video
I was
game.
like,
It's
okay,
it's one of the new book series. The Star Wars.
I know there's Rebels, which is set in between 3 and 4.
No, it's the it's a trilogy. It's a Star Wars book series, and it's the one that leads from Return of the Jedi into The Force Awakens.
Okay.
And it really explains, like, it goes through like the Battle of Jakku and where that was the Empire's last stand, and then the Empire flees to the outer reaches where they reform and become the First Order, where they're led by Supreme Leader Snoke.
Dude.
But anyway, they like there's the one character in this series. Gosh, I can't believe I can't remember the name of the series. They go, he and like his compatriots, whatever, go to this planet and they're doing research or they're looking for something. I forget what it is. But anyway, they go into this town square and there's this really old alien laying on the ground, and they ask, like, because like people are like kicking him and throwing stuff at him, and they're asking him like, oh, what is this guy? And they're like, oh, he used to be like some important big wig back in the Republic, but now he's just a worthless, homeless, whatever. And it's Jar Jar. They don't call him by name, but the writer's like, no, that's Jar Jar. Like, that is where he ends up, is just like a lonely beggar in the street.
Well, if that's canon, that probably completely discredits the theory that he's actually a Force user, but
Yeah.
they still could have had those plans originally for him to be a Force user.
Well, I mean,
They
he
also
could've-
wrote in midichlorians, so
Oh, dude,
as far as
midichlorians.
canon goes, that whole the Phantom Menace is really hard for canon in general.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, those remind you of anything, Zach?
No, those are
those are the
legends.
original books.
But yeah, if anybody that listens to this wants to read more about the theory, there's one of the highest upvoted posts of Reddit of all time is this theory. So
Right.
you
Really?
can always go. Yeah, I think it actually is the most upvoted post of all time on Reddit.
Can I say it's hilarious that the most upvoted post and the most downvoted post are Star Wars related? The
Oh,
most
really?
downvoted
Right.
post being Star Wars Battlefront 2
Right.
and the response that they had
the
to
EA thing?
The EA thing. And the most upvoted is something for Jar Jar Binks. That's really funny.
Guys, Old Republic comes out soon. I'm so happy.
All right. Well, cool. I have one more that I just really quickly want to talk about, just for like 5 minutes. I remember talking about this with you, Elijah, a little while ago. Were you the one that said something about Pearl Harbor being planned?
Yeah, the theory kind of goes with that one that FDR either knew that Pearl Harbor was going to be attacked, or they had a strong suspicion that Pearl Harbor would be attacked very soon.
Right.
So the reasoning behind that, the only evidence that I've seen behind it is that we were clearly going to get into the war at some point, number one. And number two, all of our aircraft carriers on the Pacific Fleet were not at Pearl Harbor at the time. They were out at sea.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this kind of thing where if the carriers had been in Pearl Harbor, the fleet would have been crippled and it would have taken us a long time to recover and actually fight Japan. But where they weren't, we could respond almost immediately because we had those aircraft carriers, which are floating air bases, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a really particular conspiracy theory that I don't think we should go into, but it shows that national tragedy is really good for rallying people at home and saying, we're going to go kick your butt.
No, I
Yeah.
don't even think that's a conspiracy.
I think that's just a
That's
fundamental
just a
fact
fact.
of humanity.
Right. So I'm just saying,
You've
if
killed
if-
X, I'm going to.
right,
Yeah.
so
Y.
FDR, saying like, this is going to happen, and he just goes, and we're going to let it happen, and it's going to be the rally cry that gets us over there, kicks some butt. I can see that. It's very plausible.
House of Cards has a part in that. I don't know if you guys have ever watched that series, but they do a part where the main character, Frank Underwood, is going up for re-election, and instead of fighting a bunch of rumors on how he rigged an election beforehand, which he totally did, and there were rumors coming out about how shady he was, he decides to focus all of the attention on a terrorist attack that happens
Yep.
at the exact same time that the election is happening, and says, why are we focusing on these silly scandal ideas of me? Why don't we focus on the fact that we're at war right now?
There's a really dumb scandal that Britney Spears wanted all the media focusing on her to draw attention away from George Bush Jr. because he was just doing a lot of dumb things politically. And it was like, what if we get a really popular pop star to shave her head? It's like, that'll get him.
That's fair.
It's
Alright.
strange.
I think that one has a lot of cool
Yeah.
merit behind it. I
Right.
think that one has like probably the most context behind it that would benefit who would be the beneficiary for that.
Yeah.
Who would know about it? Probably 5 people.
That one's a little bit harder because you don't know exactly how many people would have known about it.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it was more of a suspicion than anything.
Right.
Because they had gone through military exercises where they were like, if we were Japan, we would definitely attack Pearl Harbor. Because it's right there in Hawaii. If we can surprise them and get the jump on them, there's really nowhere else that they can attack us from if we're able to decimate their fleet in Hawaii. So there's a lot of backdrop, like you said, a lot of backdrop and a lot of reasoning behind it. But I don't know how many people would have to keep it secret. Don't really know that one.
Yeah. I would say maybe just the higher ups in the government at that time, the generals,
Could be.
the I guess the commanders or whoever. Well, not even probably that level. Probably
Right.
just like the head of the military in general would
Yeah.
know.
And like I said, it could be they thought that they were going to get attacked, and it happened, and it was just
Yeah,
like,
and how many?
Okay.
There could be plenty of people who thought they were going to get attacked, but how many people thought they were going to get attacked and decided to do nothing about it because they thought it would be a
Right.
benefit to the country?
But as far as keeping it a secret as not being a higher up, just being the person that receives, intel, and you say, hey, we might get attacked, and then it ends up happening, that's not something that like is groundbreaking. If it's like, oh hey, we kind of got word like the day of, but we didn't do much about it. Like it would be different if it was like, this is going to happen and we're going to let it happen and you're going to shut up about it. Like that would be a lot different scenario for, oh, okay, I have to keep this secret for however long. Anyways,
All right. Well, plenty of food for thought.
Yeah.
Right.
Indeed.
Right.
thanks for listening.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Well, we appreciate y'all for hanging in there with us and listening to some conspiracy theories and our views and takes on them. We want to thank Elijah for gracing us with his presence and bringing in some cool conspiracy theories. I didn't know about the Kim Jong-un
Had a
one.
lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was great. As always, we hope y'all enjoyed it, but if you didn't,
But
That's
that's okay.
Rip.